Bumper to bumper, Barrero and Guardsy with you, I'm assuming till 6:30 because we're very abyssy right now. Well, I guess we do have men's and women's Gopher basketball, but nothing percolating tonight, correct?
Men's basketball is on the fan, but it's later because it's right. Oregon.
Oh, this is part of our two-step. We lost, was it to Washington the other day over the weekend?
Yes.
Down yet another player. Which is not
Crocker
something
Johnson.
We can
He's good.
afford at this point.
He's out tonight, too.
He is out tonight?
Yep.
That's not good. Is your club healthy for the big showdown week?
Yes.
Starting with Ohio State tomorrow night?
Yes, they're pretty healthy. And tomorrow night's game, just announced today, can be heard right here on the fan as well as KFAN Plus. I think our Oregon game was also on the fan.
That's outstanding.
Tomorrow night against number 10 Ohio State will be on KFAN following Fan on Demand on the air tomorrow, which is cool.
That is absolutely, I should say, impressive for sure. As I mentioned, Lavelle, with his reaction to the unfortunate Twins injury news regarding the end of Pablo Lopez's season before it even began. And then Louis with some Winter Olympics stuff. We're in the, they call it the knockout round, right? Now we're past prelims, I believe.
Yes.
In hockey. So we'll get into all that with him and who knows what else. Louis is scheduled for 5:30. He's not local, is he?
No.
Guess
you mean local here?
Yeah, it's a dumb question.
Minnesota? No.
Well, it's in the 50s.
He's local to his new hometown.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, he's where he's supposed to be, where he tells the government he is.
You are correct.
So he's there.
In any case.
Got to watch my days.
Do you want another hot button issue that you probably don't want to get near?
Oh, boy.
Should we tackle it right now?
We've got 30 minutes to Lavelle. Why not?
Why not? If not now, when?
Sure.
We actually have discussed this before. As sensitive as individuals find the issue and as polarizing as the issue tends to be. But there's a writer who I've come to respect, I think for her courage, quite frankly, because I think she also has been kind of fighting the tide on this a little bit over a period of time. Although part of the point of her most recent story via The Atlantic is, well, here's the headline. The tide goes out on youth gender medicine. American doctors are no longer united on the wisdom of medicalizing gender dysphoria in minors. For me, that's always been the decisive dividing line, youth versus adult. But for some people, that's transphobic. And that's part of the battle that we continually fight. I got a couple of texts or emails to that effect last time we talked about it. But nevertheless, we're here to do what we do. So this was dated Feb 12. And here's what she writes. As the shaky evidence base for youth gender medicine has become better known, activists have retreated to an argument from authority. Never mind the Cass report, whose findings resulted in the closure of Britain's leading youth gender clinic. Never mind the study by a leading American practitioner showing that the treatments she championed did not improve minors' mental health. Never mind reports that some adolescents were being put on a medical pathway after only a single clinic visit. For advocates, the important thing to remember was that gender-affirming care for minors, puberty blockers, and hormones, plus surgery in rare cases, was endorsed by all of the major American medical associations. Doctors agree, proclaimed the American Civil Liberties Union. Gender-affirming care is life-saving care. GLAAD declared that every major medical association and leading World Health Authority supports health care for transgender people and youth. Fired up by the Republicans' war on trans kids, and naturally deferential to institutional authority, Democrats have tended to echo the line. 2023 Congressional Subcommittee hearing on pediatric gender medicine, the ranking Democrat, Representative Mary Gay Scanlon of Pennsylvania, declared that gender-affirming care is safe and effective and supported by every major medical association, groups that collectively count more than 1.3 million doctors as members. Here's what she said. It's not up for debate. In line with this, the Biden administration lobbied to remove age minimums from the industry's standards of care. The moral of this story that she's written is not so fast, my friend. The future of medical transition for minors is up for debate. American Society of Plastic Surgeons recommended on Feb 3 that surgeons delay gender-related breast/chest, genital, and facial surgery until a patient is at least 19 years old. And then the next day, I think we talked about it in brief, maybe it was even a news on the march, the American Medical Association, the country's largest organization representing doctors, endorsed that view. In the absence of clear evidence, the AMA agrees with ASPS that surgical interventions in minors should be generally deferred to adulthood. Now, think about that sentence again. In the absence of clear evidence, how does that fit with gender-affirming care is safe and effective, and it's no longer up for debate? You find out going down the road that you want to believe, and you get too far down that road, I think, and you don't know how to get out of it. So you just go, yeah, it's settled. It's absolutely settled. And if you question whether it's settled, then you're not following the science. You're not following the research when, for quite some time, the research confirms it's not that settled. It's not that conclusive. It's not that automatic as well. She writes, these statements echo what skeptics of American youth gender medicine have been saying for years. The evidence of the benefits and risks of mastectomies and other surgeries is insufficient to justify their use as treatments for gender dysphoria, and follow-up data on those who have undergone the procedures are indeed scant. The ASPS statement also explicitly endorses the conclusions of the aforementioned CAS report, and evidence that was commissioned by the Department of Health and Human Services last year. LGBTQ groups and gender clinicians have dismissed both of these documents as fuel for right-wing attacks on care, even though Hillary Cass was a nonpartisan retired pediatrician, and most of the HHS report authors were self-described liberals and Democrats. Both the Cass review and the HHS report emphasize that the natural course of pediatric gender dysphoria remains poorly understood. Available evidence suggests a substantial portion of children with pre-pubertal onset gender dysphoria experience resolution or significant reduction of distress by the time they reach adulthood, absent medical or surgical intervention. Those are pretty powerful words. Put simply, that is, an American Doctors Association organization is acknowledging that gender dysphoria frequently resolves itself without treatment, a challenge to the idea that children's new identities should be uncritically endorsed. So we have, the question, one of the questions I have on this is where this goes politically. Because I believe that for the Democrats, it is for the Jets, as I call them, I think it's becoming more and more of a losing proposition. It goes back to these purity tests that a lot of activists, in this case, in the Democratic side of the aisle, believe in. And believe me, there's purity tests on the right, too. That you end up going down roads that you shouldn't have to necessarily go down, and that the vast majority of Americans don't even necessarily agree with. Here's another interesting part of the Atlantic story by Helen Lewis. She notes that the group, in this case we're talking about the plastic surgeon group, reminds members that plastic surgeons cannot rely on the presence of a prior medical intervention, referral, or letter of support as a proxy for surgical indication or adolescent readiness. This matters, she writes, because the idea of performing mastectomies on girls as young as 13 became a powerful symbol of a clique of doctors who could not be trusted to regulate themselves. Miami surgeon, last name Gallagher, became known on TikTok for her catchphrase, "Yeet the teat." referring to mastectomies, and for calling herself Dr. Titus Deletus. The detransitioner Chloe Cole, who has testified in favor of state bans on pediatric gender medicine, received a double mastectomy at 15. Johanna Olson Kennedy, who formerly worked at the gender clinic of the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, was a lead author on a paper recommending that mastectomies be offered based on individual need rather than chronologic age. Individual need rather than chronologic age. She once boasted at a seminar that she not worry about regret. You want breasts at a later point in your life, you can go and get them. Now, you tell me if this is sensible. That I continue to submit this doesn't have to be, unless we force it this way, into a left-right discussion. But again, I think what happens is you go down a certain road long enough. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't know how to come out of it. Now Gavin Newsom kind of has. Whether he can be believed, I don't know, because Gavin Newsom, he strikes me as one of those, politicians who blows with the wind, which, of course, doesn't make him unique in that regard. But that I honestly believe that's part of what happens. There was the case we talked about with Posner. I'll tell you what, let's stay on schedule. We'll pause here because we do have Lavelle at the bottom of the hour. So let's stay on schedule, and then we'll get to a little bit more from this story, which I think is pretty interesting. And then an observation kind of spinning off that story that I saw on X, which I also think, unfortunately, becomes an important part of the story. And Louis will join to talk Olympic hockey at 5:30. We'll get back to toy department stuff at about 4:30 or so. Live, I'm looking at men's Olympic hockey knockout round. Sweden 4, Latvia 1. About a little less than 8 minutes to go in period number 3. Do we play the winner of this game?
We play the winner of that game. Exactly right. Tomorrow.
Sweden looks
spry.
They look
ready.
Active. I'm just saying, let's not sleep on Sweden, okay? That's all I'm asking you to do. What time is Guerin on tomorrow? What time's Russo on ever?
Russo's never going to be on.
What happened to him? This is the first time in 30 years of being on with Russo where it actually has become a challenge to get him.
Mostly because every hockey game is right now.
And that's true.
And he's covering all of them.
Yeah. Well, he's Russo.
That's because he is Russo Radio.
Can't help himself. Yeah, it's
so,
hard to complain.
Tomorrow, he'll be at the U.S., presumably Sweden game.
Yeah.
Then Thursday, he's definitely covering the U.S.-Canada women's gold medal game.
Right.
Which is also, I think, 2:10 Central.
Oh, yeah.
And so, maybe Friday?
It sounds like a conspiracy by the Olympics to keep him off our show.
Thursday might be a good day to try to get Guerin, by the way. I was going to tell you that. Especially if they win
Tweener
tomorrow.
Day? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we need him to win tomorrow.
That's a good point.
If they lose, he's probably on a flight back here. He's going to be unavailable.
The Swedes just scored. They're pouring it on now. They're running up the score.
It's a laugher against Latvia.
5-1, 6:42 to go in the hockey game.
Yeah, we might not get Russo until we're getting ready for the Wild Avalanche playoff series at the X.
The showdown, huh?
I mean, that might be the next time we get him.
Unfortunately true. And
he feels bad.
The Mike Conley story is now official. Wolves confirm he's back with the club.
Yes.
We hope to get him later in this week if we're fortunate. Back to the Atlantic story. And we covered this case with Posner, a lawsuit in New York State. A detransitioner called Fox Varian testified that she'd had her breasts removed at 16, only 11 months after first identifying as male. She'd also been diagnosed with autism and had struggled with an eating disorder and anxiety. By the time of the surgery, she'd changed her name twice already. And Varian asserted that her doctor served as an enabler, repeatedly assuring her that the mastectomy she desired would greatly improve her well-being. Varian testifying to the court that she regretted the surgery instantly and detransitioned 3 years later. She won the case, and that's what I think has also maybe led to some of the proclamations from some significant medical associations as well. She was awarded $2 million in damages. The lawsuit also claimed that doctors, and this is a key item which we've discussed before, doctors encouraged her mother to approve the surgery by invoking what? The specter of suicide. And as Lewis wrote last year, the idea of youth gender medicine as life-saving for the prevention of suicide has been key to overriding parents' understandable concerns about these treatments. And she points out that as an activist talking point, this thing has been crumbling for a while. In front of the Supreme Court, the ACLU's Chase Strangio conceded that there was no evidence to support the assertion that transition prevents suicide because, quote, completed suicide, thankfully and admittedly, is rare, unquote. He argued that instead it reduced suicidal thoughts, a significant climb down from the once popular assertion that parents had to choose between a dead son and a living daughter and vice versa. It's clearly become, in many circles, too easy to throw out that threat because if you are a parent, you're going to listen to that. But if it's not based on anything other than we're just trying to inspire you to get the ball rolling on this thing, that's not good medical treatment. That's not even, I don't think, very professional medical care. And, you know, it's been written about before. I know Posner's written about this part. The guy who wrote Pharma. Money is everything when it comes to big pharma. And there is a lot of money in this care. Now, again, the number of times it ends up in the kind of surgery we're talking about is still relatively limited, but it's a lot more than it used to be. And the question is whether it should be happening at all for children, especially if parents are being fed information that is nowhere near as clear-cut as has been previously suggested. As the field has received more scrutiny, advocates have begun to stress the need for careful assessments, even though American providers in the 2010s largely rejected this essential feature of the Dutch protocol, the medical treatment for youth gender dysphoria developed in Europe in the 90s. Today, when Democrats defend youth gender medicine, they tend to do so on the basis of individual freedom rather than the effectiveness of the treatment themselves. In 2024, a brief signed by 11 Democratic senators and 153 Democratic House members urged the Supreme Court not to uphold Tennessee's ban on youth medical transition. The story, she concludes, of youth gender medicine is one of good intentions, arrogance, fear, and polarization. It is also an avoidable tragedy. And she's not naive. She says the excesses of that era, the clear retrenchment from the 2010s and early 2020s, is what prompted the backlash that fueled the current MAGA demonization. That's the term she's using correctly, MAGA demonization of gender nonconformity. And that's when I want to get to the tweet I'd seen that also got my attention here. This is playing off of, where's the story? This is from a woman named Jill Filipovich. I think I'm pronouncing that name correctly, who writes a lot about this subject. The anti-trans movement just outplayed progressives on this one. And I think progressives made a real error by trying to shut down normie concerns, fairness in sports, surgeries on adolescents, as bigotry rather than engaging in some tough questions. That's it in a nutshell. We've talked about this. Bigotry rather than simply engaging in some tough questions. The anti-trans movement did a great job at exploiting these more divisive points to tar all trans activism as extreme and a threat. And now they're coming for trans people who just want to live their damn lives. That sounds like somebody who's very sensible, and that's somebody who's not anti-trans. She's saying part of the outgrowth of this is, yeah, unfortunately, there are people out there who aren't just asking questions or aren't just writing the way Helen Lewis is. They basically are threatened by the concept of children or adults who just want to live their lives and be whatever the hell they want to be, which has nothing to do with my concern and with this particular discussion. And I've, even during the show, got a couple of texts. And I get it. It's easy. The easiest thing to do is to paint with the broad brush of, guys, you your transphobic people are all the same. It doesn't allow for any nuance, because if you allow for nuance, you might have to really look this story or look at yourself in the mirror as you examine this story and say, well, there are some issues that need to be explored here. And if we do have doctors who are being dismissive of concerns or within one visit are saying, what can I remove? That's not good science. That's not even, I would argue, not even very professional. Especially when you find out in a number of cases what the research seems to indicate regarding the number of children who end up going through several changes in their mind without these steps necessarily being taken. So I get it. I can play the game with you if you want. It's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings because I understand it. But I'll say again, I think the biggest, impediment to getting to a better place, even though you're seeing the tide is starting to turn, is to not feel that because you've gone down that road for so long, there's no way out of it, no matter what other information you receive that might well mitigate what you had thought previously on that particular story. Toy department is back when we return. We're going to chat about the bad news regarding Minnesota Twins pitcher Pablo Lopez out before the season began. We'll get Lavelle's view of it, and maybe we can get Lavelle to also. He's always looking for a Sunday column, so maybe we can get him to commit to a Sunday column on praising the Twins for almost signing Framber Valdez to a long-term, multi-$100 million contract. We were this close to stealing him from the Detroit Tigers.
We got Darvished again.
Whose rotation is more expensive than our entire payroll at this point. Lavelle is coming up next. Yesterday about the fact that apparently Monday was the 25th anniversary of the final installment of the Chad and Barrero show. And people are coming up with various memories, some savagery as well. I forgot to mention a source very close to the program threw these out. See if you recognize any of these, Guardsy, before we say hi to Lavelle.
Yep.
Canceling the fishing opener, one of our all-time favorites.
Which year?
Exactly it. Doogie ratting himself out after a party. I don't remember what that was about.
That could have been anything, too.
Yeah. And then Don, there is a gopher in my pants, and his name is Carlos Shelby. Yeah, that's true. Shelby, before we had Majors on, I think we had Shelby on. Not as regularly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But occasionally we did have Shelby on.
I bet that was good.
That's absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. Lavelle, do you have a favorite Chad and Barrero moment 25 years later?
I was listening to some of this yesterday. I was trying to think of various moments. Then it just jumped out at me because I thought, okay, what's the sports talk station in town? And he told me, 11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to his show. I'm pretty sure the one thing that threw me and made me start to come to grips with the fact that it's not all toy department on this station.
Yeah.
You and Chad, I believe, used to regularly have Sales Belton, the mayor of Minneapolis, on, right?
Yes, absolutely. Sharon Sales.
And those are the moments, because driving in the car, listening, I go, I can't believe they have the mayor of a big city talking to a sports talk station. So that's when that's the one thing I remember is those conversations. I also remember toward the end, you were taking time off and Chad was taking time off. So there was only one guy in the studio. And so then the joke became it was the Chad Barrero show.
That's true. That was good. The Chad Barrero.
Yeah, I think the Chad and Barrero show actually ended about 27 years ago. But when you were officially split up, it was 25.
Very well played. That's very, very true, Davey. Yeah, it's a very good memory. We even had, even after we split up, we used to have Sharon in studio. We haven't had, I assume she's still local. We haven't had her on in a long time.
We had her on a couple of years ago.
We had her on maybe 2 years ago, I think, the last time. Yeah, I always enjoyed our conversations with her. All right, you know the news by now. Pablo Lopez is out for the season. Was this almost your working assumption when the story broke yesterday? You hear about twinges and elbows and guys who have a little bit of mileage on the arm, even a Tommy John, improved arm, that it's likely that this was going to be the result as it turns out today?
Well, the thing that jumped out at me is that I started thinking about, I believe his last injury of the 2025 season was a forearm strain.
Yeah.
That landed him on the injury list. And a lot of times, man, those forearm strains are precursors to elbow problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about that yesterday when I first heard the news, and I didn't know because I was in the car. I was in the car, and Gargy's, touting his top 5 of 5, and when we come back, what was your best Pablo Lopez moment? I'm like, what? I was going, what? So then I was trying to get on the phone and at stoplights and figure out what the hell was going on. And I was like, oh, no. Sore elbow. I said, God, he was talking about forearm strain last year. This could be related. So that's what jumped out on me about all this. And it's too unfortunate, too. I remember when I was on the beat early in spring training, I can't remember what year it was. If I had time to look it up on the computer, I would. But you remember Joe Nathan, the Twins closer.
Yeah.
He ended up having Tommy John surgery. It happened early in spring training. I still remember being in Gardy's office and Rick Anderson and Nathan's being a trooper, talking to us in the office, and Andy's got his arm around him, and he knew his season was over. And the crazy thing about Joe was that he knew what he had to do because he'd already had reconstructive shoulder surgery earlier in his career. So, to me, he was always been the medical marvel because I don't know too many pitchers who have reconstructive shoulder and elbow injuries and still come out on the other side throwing 95. Yeah. And that's what stood out to me about Joe. And this is a flashback because same situation. You're throw some early bullpen session, and all of a sudden you feel the Twins. Next thing you know, your season's over. So it's a blow. It's definitely a blow. There's no way around it. And we have to come to grips with the possibility that he's throwing his last pitch for the Twins.
Yep.
Because if there's a work stoppage in 2027, even more ominous now with the news that Tony Clark had to resign today because the guy who's going to step in and lead the negotiations, Bruce Meyer, is a hard-ass extremist, and it's just going to be so combative now. I don't know how that's going to help the sides reach an agreement. So that may whack 2027, and that means we may never see Pablo in the Twins uniform again.
Yeah, that's very, very possible, as you say. Do you think this is likely, whatever plan the Twins are claiming they have, do you think it's likely that they may alter it on this basis, that they may feel a little closer to dead on arrival, and that, as I think hard as it is to sell, the idea of we're gonna unload everybody that we can get good value on, that it might be a better way for this team to go at this point?
Well, I think they pivoted hard at the trade deadline last year and dealt the house away. I'm not sure if they would do it in this case, especially because they've got a lot of nearly ready arms. And we've seen Vebby pitch a little bit. We've seen Festa. They're on the development path. Mick Abel, Taj Bradley apparently are close, to be Major League ready too. So it seems like they're going to have candidates for those 4th or 5th spots now instead of this the 5th spot because I think it's going to be Ryan over I guess Sidney Woods Richardson's got a better chance of making the team. And then you're going to have a battle royale for these other spots here. And, I mean, are they household names? Are they established pitchers? No, they're not. But they're pitchers who, proven that they're good enough at AAA. And it's time for them to see if they can stick in the majors. This is just a runway for them to get starts and to learn how to get major league hitters out. There's going to be some growing pains there because you were hoping that Pablo would pitch for most of the season and win 15 games. And now there may be this may cost him 10 wins, and if you took the over in Vegas of 74.5, that you gotta be scratching your head right now thinking that could be a little bit in jeopardy. I don't know if this is going to encourage the Twins to pursue a Joe Ryan trade, but I think you start the season and see what happens, and then you make a decision after the first couple months.
You have time. That's true. You do have time.
You do have time, and you may have more motivated buyers as you go into the season as well. So you may be enticed by that. And let's remember there were teams interested in Ryan last year before the deadline, and they were asking about him during the offseason as well. But this injury affects probably the one area of the team that had relatively decent depth to it, which is the rotation. So I think you got to let it play it out.
we talked about this yesterday. I think Buxton met the masses in spring training yesterday or the day before, and basically was more outspoken than he generally is, saying that he had some disappointment with the fact that the Twins didn't shut down any of the offseason rumors or speculation about the possibility of him being traded. And what confused me about that is, I don't know, I think we found eventually the reporter, there were a couple reports, as you, I think, know, that for the first time indicated that even though Buxton had proclaimed, I'm a Twin for life, I got a no trade clause, I'm not going anywhere, that since then, like after the season, there was some reporting that indicated that Buxton might be a little bit more willing to consider waiving his no trade clause. So, and that would seem to have, if not come from him, someone close to him, because I think, who do we say the reporter was yesterday, Guardsy? It was one of the best national baseball writers. I can't think of his name.
I think it was Jeff Passan.
It was Passan. Yeah, it was Passan, exactly. That was the guy. Yep. So then I'm trying to figure, well, wait a minute, how can you be mad if somebody representing you were sending out feelers not that long ago that you might be willing to move on? How did you process all this?
If I would have been there, I'm not trying to knock the people who were there asking questions, but my thing would have been, well, Buck, the word got leaked out somehow by someone on your side that you might be willing to waive your no trade clause and get moved. I would have brought that up, and also want to couple that with a comment he made late in the season. I think it was maybe to Betsy Helfand of the Pioneer Press about not wanting to go through another rebuilding plan, and say, this would be my third rebuilding plan since I've been here. You know, he made a comment to that. You pair those two together, and there's a message out there that it's kind of connected to his side of the deal here. So.
Exactly.
If maybe he could have came out too, he could have leaked it out to his people and saying that thinks the direction here is okay and that he's willing to stick with it and see how it works out, and he's happy with Shelty. Those sentiments never reached the media. It just kind of festered during the offseason. So I was a little surprised to hear that from Byron. And when I saw the headline on our website, I was like, "What?" Wait a minute.
I was confused by it too.
We heard something else. We heard the opposite of this. So I was kind of waiting to see if there's going to be a blockbuster during the off season, but it never happened. And if someone said the right words to Buxton to make him stand down on that, well, he should have let someone know that he was standing down on it.
Yeah, he could have proclaimed that, via social media himself. And to be honest, I don't think anybody would look at it as a negative if he did, right? In fact, in this town, it would be like, we can't blame him at some point. He had a really good season this last season. Maybe he wants to try to go someplace where he's got a chance to win. I mean, it wasn't like anybody was going to hold it against him like he was being whiny or being ungrateful or being difficult. I don't think.
I think whoever was left around after the smoke cleared from the trade deadline had a right to be pissed off, and there was reports that Joe Ryan was one of those guys that was upset about how things transpired. So I would have been upset too if this extent, to the extent of their fire sale was foisted upon all the remaining players. I mean, God, they traded away a very talented bullpen, and we saw what happened after the trade deadline, how the bullpen performed. I wouldn't have held it against Buxton if he had came out and expressed his disappointment and frustration. But at the time, I gave him credit because him and Javier Vasquez. I think they were in Cleveland right after the break, and they rounded the troops up and had a big dinner.
Yeah,
and got the message straight about, hey, we're here for each other. We're going to see this out. We're going to play ball. We're going to see how this happens here. Let's not fall apart. So I thought that was the right way to go at that time for him, trying to keep the clubhouse from falling apart. And once again, I wouldn't have been mad if during the offseason he would have let it be known how pissed off he was. And he could have always changed his mind if he heard the right things from the right people. Tom Polat went to visit him, I believe, in Florida. Shelty, I think, sat down with him too. If he started feeling better about the program then, he should have either said it or let someone else say it for him.
I know it's only Tuesday, so you got a long time to figure out what your Sunday column might be. But can I tell you what I want it to be?
Well, I kind of know what it is, but go ahead.
Oh, you might have been listening earlier?
No, I was listening. I kind of know what my plan may be because it's being foisted upon me by the people in the paper.
I got you. I understand. Well, far be it for me to get in the way of that. I would like you if it's not Sunday, some other day this week, to explain just how absurd and disingenuous it is of the latest Pohlad in charge, Tom Pohlad, to float any kind of nonsense about how, we were kind of interested in this Valdez guy, and we had some conversations about him too. What could be more meaningless from a guy who's claiming he's trying to put the past behind and send better declarative messages to Twins fans moving forward?
All right, here's a couple things on that subject. All right, when I read it, I started laughing, and I would actually, right now, at the moment, I would have written, thank you, Tom Pohlad, for coming out and saying things that are going to make people angry, because through the years, and this is when you were involved, through the years, I've heard how the Twins have gone after people. They had this big conversation with Zach Wheeler, but his wife wanted to be close to the East Coast. They signed with Philadelphia. They actually I think they offered Yu Darvish $100 million.
You were the guy who.
And when I've said this to you on the radio, you have exploded.
Yes, that's right.
So instead of me being yelled at, I'm thank you, Tom Pohlad, for making people yell at you. And then now the second part of that, Dan, is it's time to shut up.
Yes.
It's time to shut up.
He's too available.
Actions speak louder than words.
Has he
it's
come
not
over
about
to your
what
house
you try
yet?
to do. Huh?
Before he went to Florida, did he try to get to your house? He's everywhere. He wants to be with everybody. It's unbelievable.
It's not about what you tried to do. It's about what you're doing.
Yes.
It's about putting W's on the board and winning games and doing things that are going to make people want to come back. Instead of talking about, well, we're close in this guy. You can't be close anymore. You got to be on mark. You got to produce. You got to have tangible proof that you're serious about regaining the fans' trust. Talking about being close to something is not going to get it. And he may think that's a cool thing to say at the time, but in the long run, it doesn't work.
No, there's just no way that it's going to work. By the way, as we're chatting, Chris just texted this. Please talk cigars with Lavelle instead of the Twins. Apathy is at historic highs with this club. That's going to be the battle for you. Is you're a ball guy, but are you going to have to be persuaded to actually pretend that people care about the team this year?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one because people are checking out. And at the same time, I still run into diehard Twins fans who still claim they're going to go to the game.
Yeah, sure. There's some.
Some of these warriors with the keyboard, are running with the ball here because they can. Because look at what the Twins have done and failed to accomplish. So, yeah, that's going to be tough. Just trying to write like positive stories about. You might find an interesting story in camp about a player, his background or something, and someone's going why should I even care? This team is not going to win. I'm not engaged. I have no reason to come to the ballpark just because some guy, has an animal rescue shelter on his property. That's not going to be enough for me. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Bobby Nightingale, and as much, our column, I don't know if you know this, our columnist staff has some years of baseball experience. When you have Royce E. Suhan and myself who have covered the Twins for X amount of years, we tend to want to go to the ballpark and write a baseball story. And I don't know what the impact that's going to be this year, and that could be definitely a challenge. And we can't write the same story about how they stink either. We got to come up with
that's
creative ways to write about that.
Yeah. Well, Gargi and I were talking about this at the top of the show. Lopez, generally speaking, is an easy guy to root for. He's very adult, as you know. He's very professional and, has been a good pitcher for this team. I think you put him under the classification of a team that has very little credibility, looks for individual players who might give them a measure of that. And that, to me, at his best, is exactly what he represented. So the fact that it's over even before it begins, and as you say, might be over, period, whether you care about the Twins or not, that's still, I think, a significant story worth exploring, and it is kind of a shame.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. because you wanted to see him bounce back and have a good year and be that guy. Because I think when he's pitching well, the Twins have two of the top 25 starters in baseball in Ryan and Pablo. I'm not saying they're in the top 10, but I think you can make an argument that they're in the top 25. And there's teams that cannot boast that unless they're the Los Angeles Dodgers or the New York Yankees or maybe the Toronto Blue Jays. So that's an advantage that the Twins had that has been severely limited today or by yesterday when he walked off the mound with a twinge in his elbow.
I'm with you on that. Please tell Tom I almost bought tickets. Even talked about it, but just couldn't get it done. That's Josh.
The Blick Splash Sounder. Nice guarding.
$2 beers. I guess that's what we can get excited about, right?
Hey, you know what? It works in Colorado. Colorado's been a hot mess for years.
Yeah.
And what they did, they redid the right field upper deck, and it's happy hour 2 hours before game time. And it's $3 Coors. And by the way, you can get Coors for kind of a decent price in Colorado because of proximity reasons. But craft beers are $6. And the right field upper deck is like bustling, like before Rockies games. It's weird. And I believe Colorado is still middle of the pack in attendance, despite the fact they've been a hot mess for several years.
You continue to be embedded in the curling community, correct?
Yes. I just wrote about curling tiebreakers because that might come into play tomorrow to help the USA men advance to the semifinals.
What about curling cheating? Because, as you know, Canada is under siege for all sorts of illegal touching that they're not supposed to do. So are you a great Olympics curling cheating mind? What is the grievance legit on Canada? Because they, of course, are calling it a vast right-wing conspiracy. That everybody's against them and that they're not really doing anything against the rules.
Well, I will say this. Canada was cheating, no doubt. They were wrong. But I've also gotten indication talking to former curlers. Mm-hmm. Some who competed at the highest level saying that it does happen at times. And in most cases, people look around that it's not caught out. I guess you can call people out on that, but people have not done so. And plus, I talked to John Schuster about this, and he says it barely makes a difference in the outcome of a delivered stone. But it just looked weird that Sweden must have knew about this because, ironically, they had cameras fixated on that area where Jacobs was releasing the rock. And you see his finger touching the stone. And the next day, Rachel Homan, who some people consider to be the best individual women's curler in the world, was doing it. And then I think Great Britain got busted for a violation as well. They had a rock taken out of play for something. So it's weird because I think curling wants to get more mainstream and get in the public conversation. And as much as the curling purists don't want to see this happen, but it's happening because people are talking about this stuff. There's no better way for a controversy to get people talking in sport that happens at the Olympics, which is supposed to be the highest level of sportsmanship, So it's brought attention. I don't know if it's the attention that they want, but it's been interesting. And in the end, as Schuster pointed out to me, he really doesn't think it really helps the Rock that much anyway. But if there's a rule against it, then they have to abide by the rule.
Let's finish with this. You're a Chicago kid. We saluted earlier in the day, ode to a dead guy, Reverend Jesse Jackson. How big a name was he for you? Any recollections? Growing up? You grew up on the south side of Chicago, correct?
Yeah, 107th Street.
Yeah, that's what I thought. What is that when you hear the name Jesse Jackson? What gets triggered?
As a kid, he was a god to me.
Yeah.
Because he was a person who had this presence and the oratory skills and the ability to bring people together and the ability to unite people. And Operation Push headquarters, I remember where it was at, and Operation Push was a massive, massive effort. As a kid growing up in Chicago, and the impact he's had on that city, on this nation, has been remarkable. And the Keep Hope Alive speech at the convention was one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard. It's very, very sad to hear that he was passed. He had been ill over the last few years. Right. I think he was hospitalized last year.
Yep.
But he definitely leaves a legacy. You may want to read up about this. It's kind of fascinating because Jesse and Barack Obama did not see eye to eye on some things. And so it wasn't like they were simpatico about how to move forward with the effort to ensure equality and provide economic benefit opportunities, for minorities. So they had different ways of doing that. But nevertheless, Jackson did show up at Obama's celebration at Grant Park, and you saw him standing there with tears in his eyes. You can argue if there were crocodile tears or not, but he was there nevertheless, and he was moved by the spectacle that it was. So, so as far as I'm concerned, he's one of the greatest people of my lifetime.
Well, and it is worth noting that long before Barack Obama broke through, Jesse was the first black national presidential candidate that had a following. He didn't ever come close to winning, but he won some states. He definitely had a following, and it's, as the cliche goes, somebody's got to open the door to make it seem more possible. And then enough time goes by and you get to that longer than obviously should have, and you get to another place. So I think all those points are very, very valid. I'll leave you with this. This is from KFAN, Gal. Jesse Jackson reads Seuss. Twins bullpen better get loose. Favorite new follow is Lou Ragoose. Wolves in 5. That's very creative. That's pretty good. It's pretty well done.
Oh, the hits just keep coming, I tell you.
It's outstanding. And outstanding work from you today. I appreciate the bonus time, and we'll chat Friday.
Hey, thanks for having me. Look forward to Friday.
That is Lavelle Neal III giving us some bonus time today on an unfortunate day for your favorite, well, some of your favorite baseball team, the Minnesota Twins, if you even have a favorite baseball team at this point in the Twin Cities area. Top 5?
Well, I guess I'll recycle it from yesterday. What was your favorite Pablo Lopez moment?